She arrived at the music hall before anyone else, carrying her worn-out cleaning supplies and her quiet determination. The morning sun was just beginning to touch the tall windows, and the hall was silent except for the faint hum of the old heaters. People usually rushed past her, not noticing her presence. To them, she was just the janitor, the one who mopped the floors, emptied the trash, and made sure everything looked presentable. No one thought about the person behind the broom, the one with a story, a dream, or a heart full of music. Every day was the same. She pushed the mop across the shiny floors, dusted off chairs, and polished the piano keys, all while humming soft melodies she had learned long ago. No one ever asked her name. No one ever noticed her talent. Even the musicians, who spent hours practicing for their big shows, often gave her a passing glance or a polite nod at best. But she didn't mind. She knew the music she carried inside was hers alone. It was a secret gift, hidden behind the uniform of a janitor and the quiet life she led. She moved carefully through the hall, her eyes scanning every corner, making sure the room was spotless. She had been doing this job for years, and though it paid little, it gave her a sense of purpose. Some people thought she was just cleaning floors, but in her mind, she was preparing a stage. Every sweep of the mop, every dusted shelf, every polished piano key was a step closer to something bigger. She believed that one day, someone would hear the music inside her and understand that she was more than what people thought. There were days when she felt invisible. She could hear the laughter and chatter of the staff in the break room, the sound of performers rehearsing in the distance, and she felt a pang of longing. She wanted to join them, to show them that the quiet janitor who moved silently through the halls had a heart that beat in rhythm with the music. But fear held her back. Fear of being laughed at, of being told she didn't belong. So, she kept her music to herself, letting it grow quietly in the corners of her mind. Despite the challenges, she found joy in small moments. Sometimes a musician would leave a piece of sheet music on the piano, and she would glance at it, imagining herself playing it perfectly. Sometimes the sunlight would fall just right on the piano keys, and she would feel a surge of inspiration. She would close her eyes and tap the keys lightly, careful not to disturb anyone, feeling the music flow through her fingers. These secret moments were precious, and they kept her going. Her life was simple but full of routine. She woke up early, cleaned the hall, ate a modest lunch in the staff room, and then returned to her duties. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and when she did, her voice was soft and polite. People often mistook her shyness for lack of confidence or talent. They didn't see the countless hours she had spent practicing alone, the hours she had spent listening to recordings and learning to play by ear. Her talent was a flame hidden under layers of dust and routine. Sometimes, she would watch the performers from a distance, admiring their skill and presence. She noticed the way their fingers moved over the piano keys, the way their bodies swayed with the music, the way they commanded attention effortlessly. She wondered if she could ever do the same. She dreamed of a day when her music would speak louder than her quiet demeanor, when people would see her for who she truly was, not just the uniform she wore. But for now, she kept moving through her day, cleaning, organizing, and maintaining the hall. She was meticulous, making sure every detail was perfect. Chairs were aligned, floors were spotless, and the piano gleamed under the soft lights. Every corner reflected her dedication, even if no one noticed. To her, the hall was a canvas, and her cleaning was a way to prepare it for the masterpiece that she believed would one day come from her hands. She sometimes faced small acts of unkindness. A staff member might roll their eyes at her when she asked a question, or a performer might make a joke at her expense, thinking she wouldn't understand. These moments stung, but they didn't break her spirit. Instead, they fueled her determination. She decided that one day, her music would speak for her, louder than any insult or dismissive glance. One day, people would hear the melody in her soul and understand the person they had overlooked for so long. Her friends outside the hall didn't know much about her work. They knew she was quiet and hardworking, but they didn't know the depth of her passion. She rarely talked about her love for music because people often dismissed it. But she couldn't hide it completely. At night, After everyone had left the hall, she would sit at the piano and play for herself. She poured her heart into each note, feeling the music fill the empty space, feeling alive in a way that nothing else could give her. These were her moments of freedom, her moments of truth. Sometimes she would imagine the audience she hoped to one day play for. She saw their faces, their expressions, their emotions. She imagined them being moved by her music, being touched by the feelings she poured into every note. It kept her motivated, even on days when her work felt thankless or invisible. She believed that her music had the power to change the way people saw her, to reveal her true self beyond the title of janitor. As the day continued, she moved quietly through the hall, her eyes catching the smallest details. She noticed a scuff mark on the floor and took the time to polish it. She adjusted a chair slightly to make sure it was perfectly aligned. She checked the piano keys for dust and ran her fingers over them lightly, imagining the melodies she would one day play. Every action was deliberate, every movement a preparation for the moment she hoped would come. Her life was a balance between invisibility and expression. During the day, she remained unseen, blending into the background. But in the quiet moments, she allowed herself to dream and to create. The hall was her sanctuary, and the piano was her confidant. She didn't need anyone else to understand her passion. She only needed the music to flow through her, to remind her that she was capable of something extraordinary. Even when the day was long and exhausting, she found small sparks of joy. A ray of sunlight hitting the polished floor, the gentle echo of a piano note from a distant rehearsal, the smile of a child visiting the hall. These little things reminded her that beauty existed even in ordinary moments. And in her heart, she held onto the belief that her own beauty, her own music, would one day be seen and heard. She continued her work with care, her mind always half in the present and half in the world of music she carried inside. She didn't rush, but she didn't linger either. Every sweep of the mop, every dusting, every careful polish was a step toward the day when she would no longer be invisible. She believed in the power of patience, in the power of persistence, and in the power of talent that waited quietly for its moment to shine. By the time the hall was ready and the first staff members began to arrive, she had finished her morning routine. She stood back for a moment, looking around the hall with satisfaction. It was spotless, ready for the day ahead, and yet it felt empty without the music she longed to play. She ran her fingers lightly over the piano keys one last time, feeling the smooth surface beneath her touch, feeling the melody in her heart, and knowing that one day, someone would hear it and understand her true self. And so, she began another day, the janitor who carried a secret symphony inside her, moving quietly through the halls, unnoticed by most, but full of a quiet hope and a dream that refused to be ignored. She believed that one day, the world would stop, listen, and finally see the masterpiece that had been inside her all along. Her days passed in quiet rhythm, each one blending into the next, yet filled with small moments that kept her spirit alive. She had grown accustomed to the routine of the hall, to the familiar scent of polished wood and waxed floors, to the soft echo of footsteps and the distant hum of instruments. Most people saw her only as a janitor, someone who cleaned and organized, but she carried within her a world of music, a talent that no one had yet witnessed. It was a world she visited in secret, a world that belonged solely to her. Every morning, she walked past the grand piano in the center of the hall, her hands full of cleaning cloths and polish. Sometimes, if the hall was empty and the air still, she would pause for a moment, placing her hand lightly on the keys, feeling the cool surface beneath her fingers. She would imagine the music flowing from them, the notes filling the room, the audience mesmerized by the sound. It was a private ritual, a small escape from the life that didn't see her talent, and it brought her immense joy. She remembered the first time she had truly felt music in her soul. She was younger then, sitting at an old piano in a dimly lit corner of her home. The keys were worn, some sticky, others slightly out of tune, but she had played anyway. Each note she pressed sent a thrill through her, a sense of connection that made her feel alive in a way nothing else could. Over the years, she had practiced quietly, learning by ear, listening to recordings, imitating the great musicians she admired. She had grown skilled, even brilliant, but her talent remained hidden, wrapped in the cloak of everyday life. One afternoon, as she was cleaning the hall before a rehearsal, she noticed a group of young musicians preparing for their practice. They were lively, talking and laughing as they arranged their instruments. She smiled softly to herself, a mixture of admiration and longing in her gaze. They were confident, assured, and full of energy, while she remained in the background, unnoticed. Yet she did not envy them. She knew that her time would come, that her music would one day speak louder than her quiet presence. She moved around the hall with precision, dusting each shelf, wiping down each surface, adjusting chairs so they were perfectly aligned. Every action was deliberate, every movement a preparation for the moment she imagined in her mind. As she worked, she hummed softly, letting the tunes flow naturally, feeling the music fill the space in a way that words never could. She had long accepted that no one would hear these melodies, but that did not diminish their importance. They were her companions, her voice when she had none, her expression when the world ignored her. Sometimes her colleagues would pass by, glancing at her with curiosity or mild amusement. They saw her gentle nature, her quiet smile, and they labeled her as shy or ordinary. They did not see the countless hours she had spent mastering her craft, the dedication that had shaped her hands and mind. They did not hear the music in her soul, the fire that burned quietly but intensely. She had learned to be patient, to allow her dreams to grow silently, knowing that the right moment would reveal them. One evening, the hall was empty, and the soft light from the chandeliers cast long shadows across the polished floor. She had just finished cleaning and was about to leave when she noticed the piano, bathed in the golden glow. She approached it cautiously, her heart beating with a familiar excitement. Her fingers hovered above the keys, feeling the smooth surface, imagining the notes she would play. She had memorized so many pieces in her mind, practiced them silently for years, and now she could finally bring them to life, even if only for herself. She sat down and pressed the first key lightly. The sound echoed through the empty hall, resonant and pure. She closed her eyes and let her hands move naturally, allowing the music to flow as it had countless times in her imagination. Each note seemed to vibrate with her heartbeat, each melody carrying the emotions she had kept hidden for so long. It was not just practice. It was an expression of her soul, a declaration that she existed beyond the label the world had given her. As she played, she imagined the audience that had never seen her, that had never considered her capable of anything beyond her work. She pictured them watching, their eyes wide with wonder, their hearts moved by the sound she created. She felt a mixture of joy and longing, a bittersweet reminder of how much her talent had been overlooked. Yet, there was no sadness in her playing, only a deep, abiding love for the music and the connection it brought, even if imagined. The hours passed unnoticed as she continued, each piece more complex and expressive than the last. She experimented with new techniques, tested her skill, and pushed the boundaries of her ability. In these moments, she was not the janitor, the quiet worker in the background. She was a musician, an artist, a creator. The hall transformed around her, becoming a stage, a sanctuary, a place where her talent could breathe freely. She lost herself in the music, and in that loss, she found herself. Occasionally, she would pause to wipe a tear from her eye, moved by the depth of emotion she felt in each piece. It was a private connection, an intimate understanding between herself and the music. She had learned that talent was not just about technique or speed. It was about feeling, about expressing the inexpressible. And she had lived for these moments, even if the world outside never acknowledged them. One day, as she polished the piano after a long cleaning session, she overheard a conversation between two staff members. They were discussing an upcoming event at the hall, a performance that would bring a large audience. They mentioned that the main pianist might be delayed and that the organizers were worried about filling the time. She felt a flicker of hope, a tiny spark of possibility. Could this be the moment she had been waiting for? Could she play for an audience even if it was unexpected? She did not speak to anyone about it. She did not want to draw attention to herself. Instead, she allowed the thought to grow quietly in her mind, imagining the scenario, planning how she might seize the opportunity if it arose. She knew she had to be prepared, to keep her skill sharp, to ensure that if the moment came, she would be ready to show the world the music she had carried in silence for so long. Her practice continued, more focused than ever. She explored new pieces, perfected old favorites, and experimented with her own compositions. She studied the nuances of each note, the way the sound could convey joy, sorrow, longing, or hope. Each day, she grew more confident in her abilities, even if no one else recognized them. She understood that true talent did not require validation. It thrived in dedication, in love for the craft, in the patience to wait for the right moment. The hall remained her sanctuary, the piano her closest friend. She often imagined the reactions of the audience, the way they would gasp, smile, or cry at the beauty of her playing. She pictured the astonishment on the faces of those who had dismissed her, the realization that the quiet janitor they had overlooked was capable of something extraordinary. This vision sustained her, gave her strength, and reminded her that her music had value, even if the world had yet to see it. She also began to notice small changes in herself. Her movements became more assured, her posture more confident, her hands more precise. The music had not only trained her fingers, but had shaped her presence, her demeanor. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, a subtle awareness of her worth, even if others failed to acknowledge it. The music had given her identity, a sense of purpose that transcended the label of janitor. Despite the monotony of daily work, she found joy in small details. A perfectly polished chair, a floor that reflected the light just right, a piano key free of dust. These were small victories, reminders that her care and effort mattered. She treated each task with intention, as though preparing the stage for a grand performance, even if the audience was only herself. In these moments, she felt pride, fulfillment, and connection to something larger than her immediate surroundings. Her life remained simple, her interactions brief and polite, yet every action carried weight. She had learned to navigate the world quietly, to endure the dismissal of others, and to cultivate her talent in secret. The music inside her had grown into a powerful force, a companion, a voice that would not be silenced. She believed in it, nurtured it, and waited patiently for the day when it would be recognized, when it would no longer be a secret hidden behind the janitor's uniform. And so, she continued each day, moving quietly through the hall, caring for it as if it were her own stage, practicing and imagining, dreaming and preparing. Each note she played in secret, each piece she mastered, each moment of quiet reflection brought her closer to the day when her talent would shine. She carried within her the belief that no matter how invisible she seemed, her music was real, powerful, and ready to touch the hearts of those who would one day hear it. The day of the rehearsal arrived with a mix of excitement and tension. The hall was busier than usual, filled with performers, staff, and a few early audience members preparing for the evening show. She moved quietly through the bustling space, carrying her cleaning supplies and attending to her usual duties. But there was a noticeable edge in the air that made her pulse quicken. Something felt different today, though she could not yet place it. The piano, sitting grand and polished in the center of the stage, seemed to call to her, whispering the melodies that had been building in her mind for years. As she dusted the chairs and swept the floors, she noticed a group of performers gathered near the stage. One of the pianists had arrived late, and the organizers were murmuring about how to fill the time before the show officially began. She paused for a moment, her hands gripping the mop handle tightly, a mix of nervousness and anticipation swirling in her chest. Could this be the opportunity she had been waiting for? The thought sent a jolt of energy through her, but she forced herself to remain calm, continuing her work as if nothing had changed. The performers moved about, adjusting their instruments, chatting and laughing. She could feel their eyes occasionally flick toward her, not in recognition but in passing curiosity. Some whispered comments made her heart tighten. Questions about who would step in if the main pianist didn't arrive. Discussions about time management, but she didn't let them distract her. Her mind was already rehearsing, envisioning her hands gliding over the keys, the music filling the hall, the audience captivated by the sound that had lived in her soul for so long. During a brief lull, she found herself standing near the piano. The polished keys glimmered in the soft light, inviting her to sit. She hesitated, feeling a rush of fear and excitement. What if she failed? What if they laughed? But then she remembered the countless hours of practice, the secret melodies she had nurtured, the dedication she had poured into her talent without anyone noticing. This was her moment, or at least a chance to glimpse it. She moved closer, her fingers hovering above the keys, feeling their cool smoothness and imagining the sound they could create. Her thoughts were interrupted by a stage manager glancing at her anxiously. The main pianist had not yet arrived, and the pressure to start the rehearsal was growing. She felt her heart leap, the possibility she had dreamed of suddenly tangible. She could play, she realized, not as a janitor, not as someone invisible, but as the musician she had become in secret. The decision was quick, almost instinctive, and she approached the piano, her fingers brushing lightly over the keys before taking a deep breath. As she sat down, the chatter around her faded into a blur. She focused on the piano, the instrument that had been both her companion and her secret. The first notes were gentle, almost tentative, but they carried a clarity and depth that immediately caught the attention of those nearby. Whispers spread through the room as the performers stopped their practice and staff paused mid-task, realizing that this was no ordinary janitor sitting at the piano. Her music spoke for itself, and it spoke loudly. She closed her eyes, allowing her fingers to move naturally, letting the melodies flow from her mind through her hands. The notes were expressive, conveying emotion and story, each one carefully crafted yet infused with spontaneity. The hall seemed to transform around her, the polished floors reflecting the soft light, the walls resonating with the sound, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Everyone who heard her knew, in that instant, that something extraordinary was happening. As she played, she imagined the audience she had longed to reach. She pictured them sitting in awe, listening intently, feeling the music as deeply as she felt it herself. She thought of those who had overlooked her, who had dismissed her as merely a janitor, and she felt a quiet satisfaction. This music was her voice, her expression, her declaration of identity. It was not boastful or loud, but its power was undeniable, resonating with authenticity and skill honed in silence. The performers around her began to gather closer, their instruments temporarily forgotten. Some exchanged looks of disbelief, their eyes widening as they realized the depth of her talent. Even the staff who had passed by without noticing her presence felt a shift, a sense of awe and respect replacing the casual disregard they had shown before. She did not play for recognition, yet the reaction of those around her was undeniable proof that her music mattered. She transitioned seamlessly from one piece to another, each melody more intricate and moving than the last. Her hands moved gracefully, almost as if guided by instinct, and the sound filled every corner of the hall. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a vessel for her soul, carrying her experiences, her emotions, and her dreams into the space around her. The quiet janitor had become a performer, a storyteller, and her audience, initially unaware, was now fully captivated. A few of the staff members whispered to one another, trying to identify her, questioning how someone they had overlooked could play with such mastery. The musicians were equally astonished, recognizing her technique, her expression, and her understanding of the pieces she played. There was an unspoken realization spreading through the room. Talent cannot be measured by appearance or title. Here was living proof right in front of them that brilliance can be hidden in the most unexpected places. As she continued, she felt a wave of emotion. The years of patience, the secret practices, the quiet determination had all led to this moment. She allowed herself to feel pride, not arrogance, but a deep acknowledgement of her own worth. She had persevered in a world that often dismissed her, and now her talent was undeniable. Each note she played was a testament to resilience, to the power of dedication, and to the beauty of hidden potential. Minutes passed, and the hall was completely silent except for the sound of her playing. No one moved, no one whispered, no one dared interrupt. The music had captured their attention entirely. Even those who had laughed at her small mistakes or overlooked her daily work found themselves drawn into the emotion she conveyed. It was a universal language, a connection beyond words, and she was fluent in it. When she finally paused, the room seemed suspended in a moment of awe. The first reaction was a soft murmur, followed by a wave of applause that started slowly but grew rapidly. Some people rose to their feet, unable to contain their admiration. Eyes glistened with tears, smiles spread across faces, and the atmosphere was charged with wonder. She sat quietly for a moment, taking it in, feeling the impact of what had just occurred. She had played not for recognition, but for herself, and yet the world had responded with the validation she had never sought yet deeply deserved. The stage manager approached cautiously, unsure how to address her, but their expression was one of amazement. The performers looked at her with newfound respect, some nodding silently, others speechless. She remained calm, her humility intact, but inside she felt a surge of confidence and joy. She had crossed a threshold, moving from the background into a space where her talent could be seen and felt, even if it had been unplanned. After a brief pause, she played another piece, this one more personal, filled with the melodies she had composed herself. The hall absorbed every note, the audience responding instinctively to the emotion and story within the music. The experience was transformative, not just for her, but for everyone who had witnessed it. The quiet janitor had become the centerpiece of the moment, and the music had spoken louder than any words could. By the time she concluded, the applause was overwhelming, a mixture of shock, admiration, and joy. People who had underestimated her now looked at her with respect, realizing the depth of talent that had been hidden in plain sight. She smiled softly, acknowledging the moment but not letting it define her. She had played for herself, for the music, and for the dream she had nurtured quietly for years. The day ended with conversations buzzing around the hall, but she moved quietly, returning to her duties with the same care as always. Yet inside she felt a shift. The world had seen her, truly seen her, for the first time. Her talent had broken the barrier of invisibility, and she knew that her life was about to change. The piano, once a secret companion, had become a bridge to recognition, a pathway to the opportunities she had always imagined. As the hall emptied and the last echoes of applause faded, she lingered by the piano, her hands brushing over the keys one last time. She did not play again, not yet. Instead, she allowed herself to feel the quiet satisfaction of achievement, the joy of having shared her music with others, and the anticipation of the journey ahead. The janitor had stepped into the light, and the world had begun to notice the brilliance that had always existed within her. She had waited patiently, and now, at last, the stage was hers. The hall had returned to its usual quiet after the initial burst of applause, but the energy lingered in the air. She moved slowly, collecting her cleaning supplies, though her mind still hummed with the music she had just played. The reactions of those around her replayed over and over in her thoughts. The wide eyes of the performers, the whispered conversations of the staff, the subtle nods of admiration. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, a recognition of her talent that went beyond polite acknowledgement. For years, she had worked unseen, her skills hidden behind her uniform and quiet demeanor, and now she realized that the world could indeed notice her brilliance. As she continued her duties, she noticed the hall manager approaching cautiously. The manager's steps were hesitant, their expression a mixture of surprise and admiration. They spoke softly, congratulating her on her performance, and for the first time, she heard someone acknowledge the hours of dedication she had invested in her craft. It was not just about the music. It was about seeing her for who she truly was, beyond the label of janitor. She smiled politely, grateful yet modest, knowing that her journey had only just begun. Word began to spread quickly among the staff and performers. Colleagues who had once ignored her or dismissed her work now whispered in hushed tones about the janitor who had played with such mastery. Some stopped by the piano, cautiously asking her questions, wanting to learn more about her background, her training, and how she had acquired such skill. She answered quietly, never boasting. But each word carried the weight of experience and passion. She had earned their respect, not through self-promotion, but through the undeniable power of her talent. The musicians who had been rehearsing nearby now looked at her with a new sense of curiosity and respect. One of them, a seasoned pianist, approached her, asking if she would consider performing at an upcoming event. The offer stunned her. She had dreamed of this moment for years, yet the reality was both thrilling and intimidating. She hesitated briefly, unsure if she was ready to step fully into the spotlight, but then she realized that her time had come. The years of practice, the quiet dedication, and the patience she had cultivated had led to this opportunity, and she could no longer shy away. She spent the following days preparing, practicing with renewed focus and determination. The hall became her sanctuary, a place where she could refine her pieces, experiment with new melodies, and strengthen her confidence. Each day, she arrived early, ensuring the space was perfect, her fingers brushing over the keys as she imagined the audience that would soon hear her. The thought of performing in front of others filled her with both excitement and nerves, but she embraced it, knowing that this was the moment she had waited for all her life. Her co-workers, once indifferent to her presence, began to offer small gestures of support. Some brought her water or helped adjust the piano bench, while others gave quiet words of encouragement. It was a subtle shift, a change in perception that warmed her heart. She had never sought recognition, but it felt good to be seen, to have the effort she had poured into her craft acknowledged by those around her. The hall itself seemed to come alive with anticipation, the familiar space transformed by the promise of her performance. When the day of the event arrived, the hall was filled with an expectant audience. The lights dimmed, casting a warm glow over the polished floors and the grand piano at center stage. She moved through the crowd quietly, her heart beating with a mixture of excitement and nerves. The memories of being overlooked, of working in silence while others ignored her, lingered in her mind, but she pushed them aside. Today, she would speak through music, letting her talent tell the story that words never could. As she approached the piano, the audience fell silent. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment, and then sat down. Her fingers hovered above the keys for a brief second, a final pause before she unleashed the music that had lived in her heart for so long. The first notes were soft, tentative, yet filled with clarity and emotion. The hall responded immediately, the sound resonating through every corner, capturing the attention of every listener. She closed her eyes, allowing the music to flow naturally. Each piece she played was imbued with years of practice, emotion, and dedication. The melodies rose and fell, carrying joy, sorrow, hope, and longing. The audience was mesmerized, drawn into the story she told without words, each note a testament to her journey and perseverance. The janitor who had once been invisible was now at the center of attention, commanding respect and admiration through her artistry. The performers in the hall watched in awe. Some had never seen such control, expression, and depth from a musician, especially one they had dismissed as a janitor. The staff members exchanged glances, unable to hide their amazement. Whispers of disbelief and admiration rippled through the audience, and slowly, applause began to build. By the time she reached the climax of her performance, the hall was alive with sound, the audience captivated and moved by the music that had flowed effortlessly from her hands. When she finally concluded, the applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, cheering and clapping, many with tears in their eyes. The moment was electric, a shared recognition of the brilliance they had just witnessed. She remained seated for a moment, absorbing the response, a gentle smile on her face. It was more than validation. It was proof that talent and dedication could not be hidden forever. The world had finally seen her, and the music had done the talking. In the days that followed, her life began to shift in small but meaningful ways. Invitations to perform, offers of mentorship, and words of encouragement flowed in. The hall itself seemed to treat her differently, with staff and performers showing greater respect and consideration. Yet, she remained humble, grounded by the knowledge that her journey was ongoing, that each performance was another step in a lifelong pursuit of musical expression. She continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces and refining her technique. The music became a companion, a source of joy, and a reminder of the power of perseverance. Each note she played carried the weight of her experiences, her dreams, and her quiet determination. She had moved from invisibility to recognition, not through luck, but through patience, dedication, and unwavering love for her craft. Her story began to inspire those around her. Colleagues who had once dismissed her started to recognize the potential in others, understanding that appearances can be deceiving and that hidden talent may reside in the most unlikely places. Performers took note of her discipline and commitment, and the audience who had witnessed her performance carried the memory of her music with them, sharing it and marveling at the transformation of someone they had never expected. Even as the attention grew, she maintained her routine, arriving early to the hall, preparing the space, and caring for the instruments. She had not sought fame or recognition, but she embraced it as a natural consequence of her talent. Her love for music remained at the center of her life, the driving force behind her actions, and the source of her fulfillment. She understood that true success was not in applause or praise, but in the ability to express oneself fully and to touch the hearts of others. The janitor who had once been overlooked had now become a symbol of hidden potential, a living testament to the power of dedication and resilience. Her performance had broken barriers, changed perceptions, and opened doors she had only dreamed of. Yet, she remained grounded, focused on her music and the journey ahead. Each day, each practice session, each performance was another opportunity to grow, to connect, and to share the beauty that had always lived within her. And so, she continued, quietly moving through her days, tending to the hall, caring for the piano, and preparing for the moments when her music would once again speak to the world. The applause and recognition were welcome, but they were secondary to the joy she found in creating, in expressing, and in sharing her talent. She had waited patiently for her chance, and now that it had arrived, she embraced it fully, confident in the knowledge that her music could never be ignored again. In the days after her performance, the atmosphere around the hall began to change noticeably. Staff and performers who had once barely acknowledged her now treated her with newfound respect. They whispered her name in admiration, asked about her background, and discussed her talent in ways that had never happened before. The janitor who had spent years moving quietly through the halls now found herself at the center of attention, a person of interest and intrigue. She had not sought this recognition, yet it came naturally, carried on the waves of her music. The hall manager invited her to sit down and discuss the possibility of performing at official events. They spoke in hushed tones, aware that the other staff members were watching and listening with curiosity. She listened carefully, her hands folded on her lap, feeling a mixture of excitement and calm. This was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, yet she remained humble, understanding that her journey was far from over. She agreed to perform at the next concert, not out of pride, but because she knew it was her time to share her gift. As she prepared for her upcoming performances, she dedicated herself to practice with a focus that was both intense and joyful. The hall became her sanctuary, and the piano her constant companion. She explored new pieces, experimented with variations, and polished her technique. Every note, every melody, every expression of her hands carried years of hidden practice and silent perseverance. She felt alive in a way she had never experienced, and the anticipation of performing for an audience ignited her creativity and confidence. Her colleagues began to support her more openly. Performers offered advice and encouragement, some even volunteering to accompany her for certain pieces. Staff members who had once overlooked her provided assistance in preparing the hall for her rehearsals. The atmosphere shifted from one of casual indifference to one of collaboration and respect. It was a transformation that she welcomed silently, knowing that the recognition was not just for her, but for the value of dedication and unseen talent. On the day of her first official performance, the hall was filled with a large audience. The lights were dimmed, the polished floors reflected the soft glow, and the grand piano stood proudly at center stage. She moved to the piano quietly, her heart racing with anticipation and excitement. The audience fell silent, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. She took a deep breath, placed her fingers lightly on the keys, and allowed the music to flow naturally. The first notes were soft and gentle, gradually building in complexity and emotion. The audience was captivated immediately, drawn into the story the music told. Each piece she played was a reflection of her life, her dedication, and her perseverance. The melodies conveyed joy, sorrow, hope, and longing, touching the hearts of everyone in the hall. The janitor, who had been overlooked for so long, had transformed into a performer whose presence demanded attention and respect. The applause that followed her performance was enthusiastic and unending. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and some even wiping tears from their eyes. She smiled quietly, a deep sense of fulfillment washing over her. This was more than recognition. It was validation of years of patience, discipline, and love for her craft. The world had finally acknowledged what she had always known, that her music was powerful and deserving of attention. In the following weeks, her life began to change in small but meaningful ways. Invitations to perform at other venues arrived, some even from prestigious locations. Mentors and professional musicians approached her, offering guidance, support, and opportunities to grow her talent further. She remained humble, understanding that her journey was ongoing and that every performance was another step in a lifelong pursuit of musical expression. Yet, the validation and recognition she received were affirming, and they gave her confidence to embrace new challenges. Her story began to inspire others in unexpected ways. Colleagues who had once underestimated her started to notice the hidden talents in those around them, understanding that appearances can be misleading. Staff members began to encourage younger performers, sharing the lesson that dedication, patience, and silent practice can lead to remarkable achievements. Even audience members who had attended her performance carried the memory of her music with them, sharing it and marveling at the transformation of someone they had never expected to see in the spotlight. Despite the growing attention, she maintained her daily routine with care and precision. She arrived early at the hall, prepared the space, and tended to the instruments, ensuring that every detail was perfect. Her love for music remained at the center of her life, and her focus was on creating, practicing, and sharing her gift. She understood that recognition and applause were temporary, but the discipline and passion that had carried her this far were enduring. She nurtured her talent quietly but confidently, knowing that each day offered another opportunity to grow. She also found joy in mentoring others, sharing small insights with performers who sought her guidance. Though she was humble and quiet, her advice carried weight, and her approach inspired respect. She encouraged them to practice diligently, to trust their instincts, and to recognize that talent is nurtured over time, often in private moments of perseverance. Her story became a living example of how dedication, patience, and self-belief can lead to extraordinary outcomes. Through it all, she never lost sight of the simplicity that had defined her life. The daily routine of cleaning, organizing, and caring for the hall continued, but it was no longer a task of invisibility. Each action she performed was now imbued with pride and purpose, a recognition that even the most ordinary duties could coexist with extraordinary talent. Her hands, once focused on cleaning supplies, now also carried the power to create music that moved hearts. The transformation in perception extended beyond the hall. Friends, acquaintances, and even strangers began to see her differently, recognizing the depth of her talent and the quiet strength she carried. They marveled at her humility, her dedication, and her ability to remain grounded despite newfound recognition. She had become a symbol of perseverance and hidden potential, a reminder that brilliance often exists in places overlooked by society. Even as her reputation grew, she remained focused on her love for music. Every note she played, Every piece she mastered, and every performance she gave was a reflection of her journey, her dedication, and the countless hours spent perfecting her craft in silence. She understood that true artistry was not about fame or applause, but about expression, connection, and the joy of creating something beautiful. Her music had become a bridge, connecting her inner world to the hearts of those who listened. In moments of reflection, she would sit at the piano in an empty hall, fingers tracing the keys gently, recalling the years of practice and perseverance that had led to this point. She remembered the days when her talent was unnoticed, the moments of doubt and longing, and the quiet determination that had kept her going. Those experiences had shaped her, strengthened her, and prepared her for the opportunities that now unfolded before her. Her journey had transformed not only her own life but also the lives of those around her. She had shown that dedication and talent can overcome invisibility, that patience and perseverance can reveal hidden brilliance. She had inspired colleagues, performers, and audiences alike, leaving a legacy of hope, resilience, and the power of music to connect and transform. The janitor who had once been overlooked had become a symbol of possibility, proving that no dream is too distant and no talent too hidden to be recognized. And so, she continued, moving through her days with care, focus, and a quiet confidence. She prepared the hall, tended to the piano, and practiced her music, each action imbued with intention and purpose. The recognition she had received was welcome, but it was secondary to the joy she found in creating and expressing herself. Her story was a testament to the power of patience, dedication, and belief in one's own abilities, a reminder that true talent can never remain hidden forever. Time passed, and her life began to take on a rhythm she had never imagined. The hall, once a place where she moved unnoticed, had become a stage for her talent, a space where she was seen and celebrated. Her days still began early, with the familiar routine of cleaning, polishing, and preparing the hall, but now each action carried a new sense of purpose. She moved with quiet confidence, aware that her presence was no longer invisible. The piano, her longtime companion, had become the medium through which she shared her soul with the world. She continued to perform regularly, each recital more confident than the last. Her music touched the hearts of audiences from all walks of life, and word of her talent spread quickly. People who had once overlooked her now sought her out, eager to hear her play, to learn from her, and to understand the journey that had brought her to this point. She welcomed these moments with grace, remaining humble despite the growing admiration and recognition. Her performances became more than just showcases of skill. They were expressions of her life, her struggles, and her perseverance. Each piece carried a story, a reflection of years spent practicing in solitude, honing her craft while others remained unaware of her potential. Audiences were captivated not only by her technical mastery but by the depth of feeling she conveyed with every note. Her music spoke a language that words could not capture, connecting with listeners on an emotional level that left a lasting impression. As her reputation grew, she began to receive invitations from other venues and cultural centers. Some were prestigious, offering her the chance to perform in spaces she had only admired from afar. She considered each opportunity carefully, understanding the importance of preparation and the responsibility that came with her growing influence. She accepted select invitations, ensuring that she could continue to balance her daily routine with her emerging role as a performer. She approached each performance with the same dedication and care that had defined her years of secret practice. Her colleagues, once dismissive, now treated her with respect and admiration. They often sought her advice, hoping to learn from her discipline and focus. She shared her insights generously, encouraging others to pursue their talents with patience and commitment. Her story became a source of inspiration, illustrating that hidden potential can flourish when nurtured with care and perseverance. She became a role model not through self-promotion, but through the quiet power of her example. In her personal life, she maintained a sense of balance and humility. Fame and recognition did not change her core values. She continued to rise early, care for the hall, and cherish the moments she spent at the piano. These rituals grounded her, providing stability amid the excitement of her growing success. She found joy in the small details, the polished floor, the perfectly aligned chairs, the gleam of the piano keys, reminders that beauty exists in both the extraordinary and the ordinary. Over time, she noticed a shift in the culture of the hall itself. Staff and performers became more attentive to one another's efforts, more appreciative of the contributions often taken for granted. Her journey had inspired a subtle but meaningful change in perspective, encouraging recognition of talent and dedication regardless of title or appearance. The hall became not only a place of music, but a community that valued effort, perseverance, and hidden brilliance. She also devoted time to mentoring young musicians, sharing lessons learned from years of practice and patience. She emphasized the importance of consistency, humility, and passion, encouraging them to cultivate their skills even when recognition was absent. Her guidance was sought after not only for her technical expertise but for her perspective on resilience and self-belief. Through her teaching, she extended the impact of her journey, helping others discover their own potential. Despite her success, she never lost sight of the quiet satisfaction that music brought her. Performing for large audiences was exhilarating, but it was the personal connection with the piano, the freedom to express her emotions, and the joy of creating that remained at the center of her life. Recognition was a welcome consequence, but not the motivation. She understood that the true value of her talent lay in the ability to convey meaning, to touch hearts, and to inspire both herself and others. Her story became widely known, shared in articles, interviews, and social media. People marveled at how someone who had been overlooked could rise to such recognition. Yet, she remained grounded, focusing on her work and her music rather than the attention. She valued authenticity over fame, integrity over spectacle, and connection over applause. The essence of her journey was not about being noticed, but about realizing and nurturing her own potential, and in doing so, inspiring others. Through every performance, she carried the memory of the years spent in silence, practicing, dreaming, and perfecting her craft. She thought of the times she had been ignored, the moments of doubt, and the long hours of solitude. Each experience had shaped her, built resilience, and strengthened her love for music. The applause and recognition she now received were symbols of a journey that had always been about dedication, patience, and the quiet pursuit of excellence. As she sat at the piano for yet another performance, she reflected on how far she had come. The hall was filled with an audience eager to experience her music, yet she remained focused, calm, and present. Her fingers moved across the keys with grace and precision, the melodies carrying both technical mastery and deep emotion. Every note was a reflection of her journey, every pause a testament to the patience and perseverance that had brought her here. When the final note echoed through the hall and the applause erupted once more, she allowed herself a moment to absorb it. The standing ovation, the smiles, the tears of those touched by her music. All of it was a reminder that talent, when nurtured with care and passion, cannot remain hidden forever. She had transformed from the unnoticed janitor into a celebrated musician, a symbol of hope, perseverance, and the extraordinary power of quiet dedication. In the days and years that followed, she continued to perform, to teach, and to inspire. Her life became a blend of routine and artistry, each day offering the chance to refine her skills, share her gift, and encourage others to believe in themselves. The recognition and opportunities she had gained were meaningful, but they were not the essence of her journey. The essence lay in the music, in the patience, in the resilience, and in the quiet joy of expressing the brilliance that had always lived within her. Her impact extended beyond the hall. Students, colleagues, and audiences carried her story and music into their own lives, inspired by the lesson that talent and dedication can transcend appearances, expectations, and initial judgment. She became a living example that brilliance often exists where least expected, waiting for the right moment to shine. Her music became a bridge, connecting hearts, minds, and souls, and reminding everyone that patience, perseverance, and love for one's craft are the keys to unlocking hidden potential. And so, she continued her journey, walking through the halls she once cleaned unnoticed, tending to the piano that had always been her companion, and performing for audiences who had learned to see beyond labels. She had shown the world the power of quiet determination, the value of hidden talent, and the beauty of patience and practice. The janitor who had once been overlooked had become a symbol of inspiration, proving that with dedication and courage, even the most unassuming person can achieve greatness, touch hearts, and leave a lasting mark on the world.